Hey guys, what's going on? This is Dr. Mike and
Dr. Ben is joining today as well.
and we're here with the Active Oakland podcast. And today we have the pleasure of having Holly Noll on our podcast. She
Okay.
is the coach. Hey, Holly. She is the coach and owner of the Rising Strength. It's located here in Oakland near Samuel Merritt. And Holly, we thought would be a great guest. She has a really interesting career path. She started off as a lifelong chef and has a degree from Cornell in plant-based nutrition, and ended up kind of switching over to the strength and nutrition field. So yeah, Holly, we just kind of wanted to get started, and I'm kind of just interested, how did you start working out as a chef? Like, what's your background working in that?
So how did I start working out, or how did I start in becoming a chef?
As working as a chef, yeah.
So my family is all food service, or was all food service. Most of us have left now. In my childhood, there is a picture of me somewhere as this little tiny baby in a baby seat on an industrial kitchen. My grandma and my dad worked together at the same place. So the first time I worked a gig, I was 6 years old, and it pretty much just grew from there. Because I started very, very early in life, I kind of like progressed really quickly. And so by the time I was in my mid-20s, I was kind of at the top of where I wanted to be with the restaurant industry. And I had a choice between, do I want to stay here and work every Christmas and work these odd hours and work constantly, be injured constantly? And I was watching my aging family go through this, and I was like, I don't think I really want to stay here. I had a fairly popular cooking show and was courted a little bit by Food Network and stuff like that.
Oh, wow.
I was back up in Seattle, and so that was a possible, place to go as well. And I just sort of wasn't feeling like that was the right path for me. So I ended up sort of becoming a coach, which is a bigger offshoot.
No, yeah, that's really awesome, because I mean, you had a passion for it, and you were really kind of like reaching in the tier end of what you could do with it, but you just felt your gut was taking you somewhere else, and that ended up being kind of in training and coaching. Like, what was your experience with that before? Were you training before, or were you always active, or what kind of sparked that interest?
Yeah, it's kind of funny. I joke that I am the least likely gym owner that could possibly exist. I hated working out as a kid. My PE teacher is still one of the great nemesises of my life when I look back on my life so far. And I had asthma that was crippling. I was an overweight kid. I did ride competitive equestrian, but that is not something that is the same as doing like weightlifting or CrossFit or anything like that. And when I moved to Seattle for a bit, which I've been back for about 8 or 9 years now, I didn't have any friends. I didn't know anybody. And the one friend I had was like, do you want to come to the gym with me? And I was like, oh, geez. Yeah, okay, sure, whatever. I don't have anything else going on, and you want to hang out with me, so let's do this. And I decided that I would kind of learn how to use all of the equipment there on my own and just sort of bought my way through it. And so I started just running on the treadmill, playing around with cardio equipment, the easiest access stuff when you first get there. And I was walking on the treadmill one day because, of course, asthma. And there was a little documentary thing about cyclists that was talking about how Lance Armstrong had this enormous heart, right? Because he was, he was on steroids, but also did a lot of, endurance racing and climbing mountains and stuff on his bike. And it occurred to me that maybe I could get, this asthma thing could improve if I worked on it and if I worked out on it. And so I'd never really thought about that before. So I started just running on the treadmill until I felt like I was going to, black out. And then I would walk until I felt okay. And that's kind of the way that I started in on working out. Then, one thing led to another, and I started doing CrossFit at Globo gyms. And I realized that I could have a way bigger deadlift if I just, stopped doing all the burpees before I did the deadlift. So I started competing in powerlifting after that. Started competing with a team called Plant Built, which is an international team of vegan athletes. And then competed in powerlifting, competed in CrossFit. I compete in Olympic weightlifting now. But how those two coalesced was I was really, really passionate about being a chef. I really love food. I still really love food. And I started coaching people on nutrition and lifestyle design and working with people around chronic diseases like diabetes that can be changed through lifestyle design, and really seriously changed through lifestyle design. At the same time as I was kind of getting excited about all this lifting weights and things like that. And, you know, my whole journey is really, really long, so I'm going to skip over a whole lot of spots. But eventually I was dating somebody who owned a gym in Portland, and we ended up opening the gym down here together. And one time I came home from work and I realized that he was complaining about working like 3 hours straight as a coach. And I kind of did the math in my head, and I had just worked like 16 hours. And I was like, he still made considerably more than me doing something that I want to be doing, and I am probably pretty good at, from what I've been able to suss out from doing this with my friends. And I just basically decided to become a coach, and had kind of like been mulling it around, hadn't bought any kind of certification, anything like that. And I just had people starting to reach out to me on the internet being like, you seem like somebody I would want to work with. Will you coach me? And I'd be like, no, I don't have any certification. I have no professional anything that says that I should be doing this. I'm absolutely not going to do that. And several of them were like, I'll wait. And I was like, what? So I became a coach, and last December I bought out my ex, and now I own the Rising Strength full out. So that's kind of a longer story than you originally asked for, but
no, that's awesome.
That answered some stuff.
Yeah, no, like I said, you've had quite the interesting career. So yeah, and so tell us a little bit about Rising Strength. Now that you've kind of grown that community, like, what do you guys like to focus on as a gym? Like, what kind of gym is it? Is it a combination? Like, is it CrossFit? Is it powerlifting? Like, you have this varied athletic background, but what do you guys like to focus on at Rising Strength?
So in terms of programming, most of our athletes prefer the really heavy stuff. Obviously right now we're in the middle of COVID, so my athletes are largely at home with some dumbbells and kettlebells, complaining about how they wish they were doing heavy deadlifts. But my programming normally for group classes around here falls more in the category of, you got the warm up, you got all that stuff. And then I like to do a lot of rep maxes. So like 8 rep max, 5 rep max, 3 rep max, because people feel differently at different points, and I want people to go at a level that is safe for them. And that's something that I've really found works. So I try to go with really heavy weights somewhere in the middle, and then I incorporate some kind of a CrossFit style Metcon at the end. That's kind of what group classes will look like. In terms of what we offer, do you want to kind of me to launch into community and kind of?
Yeah, no, that'd be great. More? Yeah, even if the nutrition side as well, if you have anything with that, or like, yeah, everything that kind of Rising Strength that gym has to offer the community. So for sure.
Yeah, so in terms of what we do have to offer, we have group classes. Right now we're doing group classes over Zoom, personal training, semi-private, everything is over Zoom. So I'm just gonna kind of not say that again, but hopefully COVID will let us open up again soon and it won't be over Zoom. But yeah, classes, personal training, semi-private training. Then I also have remote athletes all over the world right now that train with me by getting my programming, and then they send me videos, and occasionally we do Zoom if it works for them. A lot of people are in clear across the globe, and it doesn't work for my schedule to be up in the middle of the night. So we kind of just do things through video in that way. But I like that because that means that I can bring them into the culture of the Rising Strength, and without them actually being here. So kind of the things that set us apart are, starting off, you know, I'm vegan. This is a vegan community. All of our events are vegan, but oddly, all of our members are very much not vegan. So we've got about 70% non-vegans here, and the rest of us are vegan and plant-based, kind of along that spectrum, or just moving towards it. I think a lot more people will be moving towards it soon with the meat shortages and everything else that's going on. So I look forward to that. But with that in mind, we also have kind of a sobriety thing. I've seen a lot of people come here because I'm also sober. I don't do any drugs or do alcohol or anything like that. And it seems to be kind of a safe space for people who are seeking those two things. So we've got veganism, and that leads us into inclusivity. So like, I believe that everybody should be in strength spaces. I believe that strength will benefit absolutely everyone, from a very old lady to a very young child, to a trans person, to you know, a masculine dude to a non-masculine dude, women, and so on and so forth. And largely strength sports and strength spaces have blocked those folks out. I have definitely trafficked in spaces that I have not necessarily been welcome, or women haven't been welcome, especially not small, loud women. And so I really wanted to make this a place that invited everybody in. And so I have trans athletes, I have trans coaches, I have gender non-binary folks around here. We do a lot of introductions, introducing people's pronouns and things like that. And then I have Muscle Babes, which is no dudes powerlifting, twice a week. And that makes it so that we can have a space that doesn't have any dudes in it. And that creates a safe space for some people. So inclusivity around all of those things is really, really big for me. We also have a dog-friendly space. So if you want to have that falling under the inclusivity, we can definitely do that too. But because we have this outdoor space, we can sometimes have up to 6 or 7 dogs in class during class. And I had originally had this idea that we would have this like dog watching program, kind of like kid watching programs at more larger, more established corporate gyms. And it just didn't really work out. The dogs just want to party and run around and hang out. So that's kind of what ended up happening. And finally, you know, I have a little bit more radical politics. I have a background in activism, and I recently started this program. I'm not sure, project is probably a better word for it, where in CrossFit we have hero workouts, which are largely for soldiers, police officers, firefighters. And I wanted to expand the hero workouts to include folks who died in the, like by police, hate violence, activists who have done really amazing things, who I consider heroes in the world, and people who are doing really incredible stuff. And so that I can bring visibility to those people, and we can honor those people in, you know, in life or in death through these kind of hero workouts. So we ran the first one, which was for Ahmad, which, you know, everybody ran for him a couple weeks ago. And then I'm going to kind of roll with those once a week and just do more education around folks who have, you know, had experiences in the world that were really traumatic, or people who are doing really cool stuff.
No, that's awesome. And I feel like that's something that, you know, it's a unique thing for sure. I don't think gyms usually kind of go into that broader perspective of inclusivity and thinking about how it is for everybody, whether you're vegan or the different genders or like different experiences. What have you found to be like a big obstacle that people have when they kind of come into a gym? Because I think a lot of people are initially intimidated. So how do you guys kind of like, especially for like women athletes, because, you know, I think it's great because it's changing the culture a little bit, that it's more accepted that women can be strong, that can do things like powerlifting. But what have you found to be helpful for people that are like maybe someone like a woman who feels initially intimidated kind of coming into that strength training environment?
Yeah, man, it's gotten so much better. It's gotten so much better. And I think it's largely because of highly visible female athletes and folks of many different gender variations kind of going out there and being like, here, I'm lifting weights, it's awesome, and owning companies and bringing people into that. And it's just been really exciting to watch that happen. But at our gym, we have a foundations program that is at the exact same time as our regular classes. So most of the time people will separate the beginners from the more advanced athletes. And the way that we do it is we have multiple coaches in the space at one time. And that means that from day one, you are invited into the community. You are invited to meet everybody who works out. I think that part of the reason that I've structured it this way is because I'm a really anxious person, and having this experience of going from one thing to another thing to another thing is kind of jarring. I like to build routines and I like to build relationships, and they make me feel comfortable. And so I figured that if people come in and they meet everybody, that they'll see that it's not a scary, intimidating environment. And largely that's worked. I've had a lot of people say things like, oh, I don't go to gyms because they're bro-y. I don't go to gyms because I'm afraid everybody else there is going to be so good and I'll be embarrassed by how bad I am at things. Or isn't everybody there a really strong bodybuilder? And I'm like, guys, everybody is not everything ever, you know?
Yeah.
And so what we do is we limit our foundations classes to 5 people a class. And that means that you can actually get to know people on a really base level. I think a lot of times strength gyms, CrossFit gyms, especially have these really big classes and you come in and you do the workout and then you leave and it's about the workout and a little bit of culture. We're more like, we want to know you as a human, what's important to you, what matters to you, and we'll work around that. And that way we can kind of bring that person in and make them feel comfortable according to what they are, right? So if they're like, oh, I'm really scared of this, then the coach can check in and be like, hey, what are you feeling right now? What's going on with you? And they can adjust according to that. And that kind of is a way to make it accessible. I'm not sure that that's really something that we'll be able to do as we grow. That's something that we've kind of been frustratingly struggling with as we grew bigger and bigger classes. But as of right now, that's how we've been doing it. And then the other thing is that I like to give people a lot of one-on-one space, 15 to 20 minutes before they ever get into class, and be like, do you have any questions? Is there anything here you want to know about? You know, and largely they'll be like, what is that? And I'll be like, oh yeah, that's an assault bike. Let's talk about an assault bike for a second and why that's in this space. Like, that's a different kind of barbell. Let's talk about that, so that they don't feel like there's any stupid questions, and that they can look around the space and they can be like, okay, cool. I've been here before. I know what these few things are, and that gives a sense of belonging.
No, I love that. And I think I've been to that gym before, and I definitely got that vibe. As soon as I walked in, people introduced themselves, very friendly, very much like you can sense that community you guys have there. Going back on the nutrition stuff, do you guys offer any nutrition services as well? Are you personally doing any nutrition coaching still, or have you mostly stemmed into strength training and coaching?
Yeah, so I still do nutrition consults. I don't do continued nutrition coaching anymore, mainly because most people were not my one-on-one clients. My one-on-one clients, I will totally focus on nutrition while we're training because we see each other one-on-one.
Yeah.
I don't like doing this like remote nutrition client thing that is really big on the internet right now. And I get it. Everybody wonders about food. And so it's a really good way to make money. But what it became was, I am this faceless email person who says, oh, that thing you did, that's bad. And that's not how I coach at all, but that's how it's perceived. So everybody falls off of the nutrition plan. I am a nutrition coach. I've been doing this for a long time. And still, if I'm on a really hard nutrition plan, I will totally fall off occasionally and I'll have mistakes. And so what would happen is people would fall off and then I wouldn't hear from them for 2 weeks. And then I'm like, where are you? What's going on? I can't support you if you disappear. And it just didn't feel good. It didn't feel like the kind of relationships that I wanted. So I've been doing just one consultation, and we'll sit down for an hour. I listen to what people are doing, what they're focused on, what their goals are, what their frustrations are. And I'll kind of offer some goals and some guidance. And then I offer myself up as a text kind of exchange. So you're at the store, you're looking for something, text me, let me know. I can walk you through where that thing's going to be, assuming you're in the general vicinity. And I can kind of help you through that experience and create success in that way. Mostly lately, those have been people who are looking to move to a more plant-based diet. Yeah. And I get this message online. This happens all the time. I want to, insert goal here on a plant-based diet. Where do I start? And I'm like, I cannot answer that in a DM on Instagram. Let's schedule a nutrition consult. And so that's kind of why I keep that in there.
Yeah.
And then Holly, when you're doing like one-on-one coaching and someone comes to you and is like, I want to start switching more to a vegan or a plant-based diet. What are some first steps that you kind of discuss with them, and what does that process look like?
Yeah, so the first step that I do, it's funny because I basically coach the same way if somebody comes to me without wanting to be plant-based and with wanting to be plant-based. And that's, what's the first question that you ask when you find out somebody is plant-based and an athlete? Go.
Protein.
So I
Enough
started
protein.
coaching. And I will coach people flexible dieting, even if they don't have a goal of any kind of aesthetic goal or athletic goal. Because when you're tracking, you can actually see how much you're getting. And I want people to be hitting that 20 to 40, depending on your size, protein goal in every single thing that they're in, every single meal that they're doing. Because the first thing that people do when they do plant-based is they stop eating enough calories and they stop eating protein goals. So they'll be like, oh yeah, I woke up, I ate some oatmeal with some bananas on it. My lunch was some mushrooms and some sauteed spinach and some rice. My dinner was, you know, basically a similar thing to my lunch. And I'm like, sick. You ate like 40 grams of protein and they were all in the form of carbs. This is not going to work for you. You are not feeling satiated. And they'll echo it back. They'll be like, yeah, I felt hungry at the end of the day. Yeah, of course, because protein creates satiation, right? And so what we'll do is we'll talk about and demystify all of these different protein goals. And that text exchange that I described earlier, that largely is around, where the heck do I find all of these protein things that you're talking about in the store? And aren't the protein options for the plant-based protein options, aren't those heavily processed? And we'll talk about why that's not necessarily true and which one of your options is less processed and more processed. Once you get down the protein thing, you're probably eating enough calories and you probably don't even need me. But it gives me a chance to be like, cool, you did it, good job, awesome. Now, do you have any external concerns? Do you have anything that we didn't touch on? And then I can go let them fly free because they've found the hardest part. And it's not really that hard when you've got a guide.
Yeah, no, I think that's super important because that's one thing we see actually quite a bit is people come and see us for injuries. And we always talk about sleep, nutrition, and other external factors. And a lot of times it's like a pulled muscle or something like that. And I'm like, have you done anything different recently? And like, yeah, I started switching to, you know, a plant-based diet or a vegan based diet. And, but that's about the only thing that's changed. I'm like, okay, did you start changing your diet with regards to making sure you get enough protein? Do you have a coach? Do you have somebody that's guiding you with that? Like, no. I'm like, okay, well, walk me through what your diet's like. And it's exactly like what you just described. They're not getting enough protein and their body's breaking down and they're experiencing injuries and sustaining injuries because of that. So I think it's super awesome that, you know, that's what you provide with your coaching, because a lot of coaches can't do that, be able to provide that nutritional guidance and provide that guidance if somebody wants to switch to a plant-based diet or a more of a vegan diet too. So I think that's awesome.
That's so interesting that you see that. And I'm so glad that you said that because it really highlights how important nutrition is to training and how important it is to get all the macronutrients in the proper amounts. And people really neglect it. So I'm glad that you I'm hoping that when you're seeing that, you're giving them a little bit of advice or a push in the right direction. But I'm happy that that's kind of the place that I'm going and that that's backed by somebody who has doctor in front of their name.
For sure. I mean, it's something that we're starting to see more and more because plant-based diet and vegan type diets becoming more and more popular, and people just don't know how to go about it the right way. So for those that are listening, I encourage you to, you know, reach out to Holly or reach out to somebody that has a background that can guide you with how to go about it, doing it the right way, and making sure that you're not gonna, you know, you're getting in enough protein and whatnot too. So
yeah. I strongly recommend that anybody in the nutrition looking to have nutrition goals has a coach, because there's so many ways to go wrong and so many ways to question yourself. But when it comes to switching to a plant-based diet, I strongly, strongly, strongly recommend talking to somebody and working with somebody, even in a very short run, even if it's just sitting down for an hour like I do, because it gives you faith in what you're doing and it gives you this sense of confidence in what you're doing. Because I've been vegan for 14 years now. I'm definitely not dying of any kind of deficiency. I build muscle just fine, but I'm about 114 pounds, 115 pounds right now. I eat between 115 and 120 grams of protein a day, easily. Honestly, my biggest problem, and most of my vegan athletes' biggest problem, is not going overboard on protein. So it's completely doable. It's just quinoa is not a freaking protein. You have to find real protein sources. And fortunately here in the Bay Area, we have a plethora of places that that have really good options that have all like a good balance. So it's kind of exciting.
What about, I know a lot of people kind of run into if they have tasting options, right? Like sometimes people kind of complain about like, oh, I'm going to miss bacon or a burgers. Like, have you, and I'm sure it's kind of advancing, but like good alternatives for like foods that people would miss?
Yeah, so I'm a total meathead. I am like always trying to get like the different tastiest, foodiest meathead options that can exist. And so this is kind of like where I have really thrived. And it's how we'll get to Fit Quick in a little while. It's how Fit Quick started to exist. And so I took those two things and I kind of got really into macro hacking. I want this option, vegan, with this much protein. How can I do that? And so I got really into that. But in terms of eating out, I just wanted to shout out a couple of places around here that you can find really, really, really good options. And the Butcher's Son is like, you can find me at the Butcher's Son on any given day. They have sandwiches that are filled to the brim with steak and roast beef and lemon chicken and ribs and all these seitan options and soy options and various different forms of protein. And so you can get really good options there. And then Timeless is, my good friends own that place. It has 2 locations in Berkeley and Oakland, but it's a patisserie, coffee shop, and chocolatier. So you can get all of the most delicious things, croissants, ham and cheese croissants, you know, blueberry danishes with cream cheese swirl, cakes, all these things that you crave. You can get those things there with a really good latte. And man, that is where I go. In terms of things that you miss, you mentioned bacon, and there's a company called All Vegetarian that you can pick up at the Butcher's Son. Actually, they have a little marketplace. There's also an all vegan grocery store that's actually only like 3 blocks away from the Butcher's Son up on University. And they have a bunch of different bacon options, but All Vegetarian is wild because when you cook it the way that you would cook bacon, you get this crispy, but you also get the chewy, and it's got the fat kind of swirled in, and it's just absolutely mind-blowingly good. Again, you know, I was a chef for a long time, and I didn't decide to go vegan and go, okay, I'm just gonna relegate myself to rice and beans for the rest of my life. Like, hell no. If that was what veganism was about, I would not be vegan. I would just be a very, very guilty meat eater. Because I need my food to taste good, right? So we've got bacon. You can pick up pizza at the store. You can pick up anything frozen, any of those junk food, comfort food things that you got at the store before. You can pick them up vegan now, which is wild. This is an incredible time to be a plant-based person. And then Beyond Meat has a bunch of really great options for burgers, and their burgers are so realistic that I've actually tricked people a couple of times. My dad, most notably. Scrambled eggs is something that people have said, scrambled eggs and fried eggs. All Vegetarian that I mentioned earlier has a fried egg option. And then Just Eggs came out with a liquid form of egg that you pour into the pan as a liquid form. You scramble it just like regular scrambled eggs. Fortunately, they finally added protein into it. I think it's a mung bean based protein. And then you can have a big plate of scrambled eggs, or, you know, a big breakfast burrito with some, and another one of my favorite brands, Gardein, has a breakfast sausage. Put those 2 together in a burrito. Really, really good.
No, yeah. I mean, you named all my favorite foods in there. So if we have burritos and pizza and bacon, I think we've got our bases covered.
I didn't get you with the croissant. I got you with the burger. Okay.
Burger, yeah, mostly burger. I'm a power lifter as well, so it's the burgers and the pizza that is the base of our diet.
Yeah.
And then you did briefly mention you have your own kind of vegan option as well, right? Is it called Fit Quick Protein waffles, I believe? Is that what it is, or?
Yeah, so I call it Fit Quick baking mixes because it turns out the vast majority of people don't have waffle makers. I did not expect that when I launched the company a couple of years ago. A lot of people honestly make mug cakes, so you can just mix it in a mug and microwave it for 2 minutes and it turns into a cake. This is not something I created. It was just created, and then I was tagged in lots and lots of photos, and people would be like, I love the mug cake. And I was like, what the heck is a mug cake? I also released a cornbread variation around Thanksgiving that you can make a big sheet of cornbread, but every serving has 22 grams of protein. So bringing it back to that macro hacking thing. And yeah, so we've got, I think we have 12 flavors right now. I'm gonna start working on some seasonal flavors here really soon. And you can find out about all that stuff on the website, which we'll talk about plugging and all that stuff at the end.
Yeah. No, I have yet to try it, but I'm definitely interested in trying out.
Oh yeah, I'll get you a bag. I'll get you a bag for sure. Maybe the donut bag.
Donuts. There you go.
That sounds pretty good.
Yeah. So, and the way that came about was I was doing all these macro hacking things on my Instagram, and people were getting really excited about it. I was writing for American Music Press magazine and doing some stuff for that, some recipe stuff paired with some music. So kind of more variation in my silly, long-winded sort of career path here. And then I started competing in powerlifting. And at the same time as I was getting ready for a powerlifting meet, I was also getting ready for a bikini photo shoot for the cover of a magazine. Those two, like you said earlier, burgers and pizza, those two are not necessarily congruent, right? Working on a bikini physique and working on a powerlifting goal is not necessarily the same thing. And I sort of was really, really upset about my lack of sugar and sugary things in my diet. I was like, man, all I want to do is eat some waffles or some cake or just drink maple syrup. I don't know. I just really need this. So I started really hacking into waffles and making protein waffles and protein ice cream. And I would make a big crunchy protein waffle and I would dump a bunch of protein ice cream over it. And I was getting lean and strong on protein and ice cream and waffles. And people were just losing it online. They were like, what is going on? How are you doing this? And I did a documentary moment for my friend's series. I gave people the recipe all over the internet. I did, you know, Instagram, like explaining, and people were like, I'm still messing it up. If I just PayPal you some money, will you just send me a bag? Well, you know, a couple hundred bags later, I was like, I think I have a business. And so I was dating somebody who very fortunately for me at the time had a degree in designing. So they designed me this like kind of basic little logo thing. I slapped it on the front of some bags. And I was like, hey guys, I'm gonna do a release of 50 bags. You know, if you wanna buy it, people have been reaching out. It sold out literally in under a minute or two. And I was like, wow, okay, all right, this is a thing.
That's so awesome.
Yeah, and so it kind of grew from there. Although, you know, I have to say, because I feel like people always kind of glaze over these periods in business, you know, I had this, I had this, I had this, now I had a business. I like to really remind people that kind of funny saying that's, if you aren't embarrassed by your first product, then you didn't launch soon enough. And my first product was one sticker, no nutritional information. I emailed it to you. It was in a lunch bag from Target and a bread bag with a zip tie on it. And my friend very nicely described it as looking like somebody played soccer with my bag of waffles before it got to me. So if you ever wanted to launch a brand, it doesn't have to be perfect to turn into a successful brand. You know, within about 2 weeks of that launch, I had an international distribution, and it's kind of just grown from there.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. That's impressive. Like I said, you have quite the resume, quite the background. So
I stay busy.
yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, those are the main questions we had, Holly. I just want to first thank you for coming on, and then for anybody that's kind of interested in those services that you offered, whether it be nutrition, the coaching, how do they get a hold of you? What's the best way to do that?
Yeah, so the easiest way to find me online is Instagram, honestly, as silly as that sounds. I'm trying to stop feeling like I'm not a professional because I lead with my Instagram. And that is @xbxh. And I will bring everything from all other aspects of what I'm doing and put it there. You can also find the gym at The Rising Strength. FitQuick is @eat.fitquick. I also, just a little plug, I have a nature porn account called Holly Does Nature. And the reason I plug that right now is because I've been posting a lot of like just serene naturey things, and I've been getting all these messages about people wanting to create calm space in their life and feeling like pictures and videos of like bird song and stuff like that are really making their lives better. So I'm going to plug that just during COVID. And then you can shoot me an email at The Rising Strength, and you can also go to therisingstrength.com. Those are kind of the places that you can find me, but honestly, most people just reach out on DMs.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, I'm just going to echo what Ben said, especially if you're considering switching to a vegan diet or even getting some training from these guys. I highly recommend them. It's a great quality gym, quality coaches. So yeah, again, thank you, Holly, for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Holly. Appreciate it.
Yeah, this has been really cool.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Holly.